Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 30th of October, and well, the 29th just lived up to quite the reputation. We shot up 35 points and then fell 60 points to finish, well, right at the 35.50 that we had marked before as our first. And then I had pointed out to you that the bottom side of the wick, which interestingly enough, we formed almost exactly the same thing, was at the 2600. We made it down to 2603, more than adequate for filling that precisely, and then that gave a turnaround buy signal that brought everything right back to that existing line. Now you can see there's no new buy, so we could still continue to suffer some weakness, but you got to appreciate the beauty of this in that, from back in May, orchestrating a 300 plus point move in the S&P, only to wait for a beautiful scenario right in here as the Fed began to really pump those rates. Got them all to the high. They're exiting up at the peaks, and then boom, we got our trigger that was, well, right here, 2930 range, just off the highs, and boom. Cascade complete. An attempted buy that was right here. You can see now, though, that we've made lower lows and we've not dipped below the red line, and pretty consistent with our DOC red here. Really hasn't plunged like you would expect with this kind of, so there is some underlying power in here, and the fact that we're going to flip into the new month as new fund money comes in, with the potential that right now orange is in a continuation mode, but it can dip down with the green crossover at that particular point. The fact that you don't have a steel reset is a problem, just like it was here when we first saw this. Any pop is going to be short-lived at this particular point. It has not been reset in any way. You can see from the NASDAQ standpoint. Likewise with the readings, it's almost identical, even though price action is slightly different. It's been a little bit more significant a move for the NASDAQ. With Merkel gone, there's fear in the EU, so this means that the potential for Italy and some of its friends in the outskirts of the EU have increased their power dramatically because of it, because that was the strongest force in preventing some of the budgetary issues, and then we're probably going to see a resurgence from Greece in that, and some of the claims that is going to put continued downside pressure. Likely to break the lows. This has been nothing but a continuation from the short right back up here at the 115 range, which was right at the outside of it. And pretty shortly here, we're going to start to see the bottom side of the range, which was down at the 111. That'll pop up once we get a little bit lower. So everything is pretty much going intact. Treasuries actually are holding fairly decent, probably should be fading just a little bit, but the added volume is probably giving it a little artificial pump right there. And who knows, if we see any kind of slowing resulting from the market failure, that may cause the Fed to be a bit more soft. It's overreacted and caused most of this as it is, but some of us would argue that that was sort of within their plan, and it started as soon as Trump came into office, because they recognized that there was going to be pro-growth as opposed to the no-growth policies that we had prior to that, and that fundamentally changed their approach, and so they tried to put a squelch on things quickly, and we'll know at the beginning of the year whether it's had its effect. And oil, because of that, also recognizing it. And, we flipped from the oil trade being the counter to gold to where it's now faded. So we should expect to see some improvement in gold beyond where we're at. We saw the pop from that in that transition. You can see these correlations are beautiful if you just look at the charts. So, wow, look at this. This was a fantastic day. I don't even know if I have the whole day's range in there. Let me shrink it again just so that you can get a broad perspective of what happened. So here was the start of the day, rallied up to the peak. That was a bit overbought, so that created all these magenta retrace levels Didn't bother to put the other ones in simply because you can just kind of follow one by one. We filled back in half of them, that left a few of these in between. And then as we started to get the cell signals, boom, 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 then we ended up with slight buys, new cells started before that decay, and so on and so forth. And we kept marking these all intraday. I recommend you go to the Skype chat, take a look, because we detailed this as it was happening. And we had a decent prospect that was right down here after we were down quite a bit, but literally orange overtook that long pretty fast. Was still decent from a buy standpoint because these ranges were so enormous. Let me go ahead and start to increase the size of this so you can get a better view. So by the time we get into this particular portion, then it just becomes a cascade, and it was beautiful. We put in this false buy configuration. We were just trying to come out of being under the -13, had the dip below the red line there. It caused the low to be revisited, but at that particular point, you never had green move over to overtake cyan, and then even particularly when they met right here, that's a critical point. As soon as this one, people always said, well, how do I know that I could short, additional? Right there, that beautiful spread move, orange dips up to cover the green 1 bar later, which is pretty much almost the exact same price. No reset of the steel. We talk about this when you're in those downtrends. You've got to have the steel move below the red to finally end it. We ended up with strong move of the orange right here. That is, in my view, was the cover point, which we talked about in there, and obviously gave it the opportunity as a long run. And sure enough, you can see how the orange stays below, and green immediately gets a strong separation, moves above cyan, and that gave the continuation for that buy setup going all the way through. Now, yes, you can say, hey, what about these DLC spreads? Sure. The problem was that even though they took place, you could have still shorted them. You would have been fine. It wasn't really much of an issue. You just didn't get any breakdown. And cyan staying above the red DLC staying above 0, right, or fluctuating at it, and then boom, again, secondary run of the cyan below red. Clear upside swing, and again, same situation with these DLC spreads that set up right here. Not a problem. You end up revisiting those lows, but what you didn't get is any follow through with the collapse of red, nor did you see any improvement in the cyan. So you ended up with just the closing of the snake mouth, which led to new output, new buy signals, and then finally, again, cyan dips below red right here, and that led to the next run that we're seeing here in the pre-market. It's filled back most of those. Now, this is going to create a new set of positive extremes going back down to the 26. Let me put that into snap mode real quick so that it grabs that right at the bottoms. And we'll put the top one that's right here. So that'll be the first target around 27, and then it would dip down to the next one right here. So pretty easy to follow that, and it gives some nice ranges. In this particular case, we're right now in the middle of a new buy reset with the orange having dipped below right there. So probably going to bring it right back up to the highs, if not make a new high on the setup right there. But all in all, fantastic action. I'll be sending out the indicators. We will have, I believe it's this chart right here that has the pivots in there. And what I'll have for these will be adjustment for you on the inputs. You can either have them show up or not. What eventually is going to take place with these is that, and I'm trying to finalize some of the couple of kinks that I've got in there that I've been working with. But these are pointing to longs that would otherwise show up on a regular DLCon paint bar that would be false, and that's what these Fs represent. And The idea being is that we're going to end up with the pivots that will show up at times where you would expect that they have a potential for follow through. Sometimes the higher pivots will show up, but you won't have a new buy signal, and that can happen. We ended up with a few ranges of that where we started to see crossovers of the green above red at the same time you're getting the steel, but you didn't get the orange dipping below. Like in all these cases right here, there's no orange dip until we get to this final setup here, but you're so far below on the shakeout that unless you're past the 23%, they're not going to be effective. And even on this buy setup that came through, while strong, had really deep. I usually use those as cover points because you can get a full return like this one, and that's what I kind of look for when you get the dramatic move of the histogram, which took place right there at that one at the 2617 close where we were above the negative 13.5, and that gave it the real power to continue to jump. Close this window down a little bit so you can see the inside of values right here. I think that's exciting because it's going to represent that. And again, even with this gamma function paint bar here, these will change also. What will happen is you'll end up seeing most likely the orange candle, and then it'll just revert back to the red, just so that you'll know, or even if a gold pops up, it'll come up for the first time, then it'll maintain the red, and that way you'll just have an idea. Likewise with the blue, it'll go from one blue candle and then it'll flip to green if it's a green. Sometimes within the blue though, you'll get a flip situation where a new short takes place, and at that particular point it'll also flip to the red side of it. So they'll just give you cursory, and I'll go over all that when I'm able to send it all out, so you'll have a very complete understanding, and just make it very easy to follow flips in the market without having to analyze each and every individual little move, because you'll have it already preset with the broader, and then secondarily the ABM will match those better configurations. And then what also is going to happen with the ABM is when we get a position where the ABM is locked across and we get a significant dip, we're going to have it follow along with the Morganacci lines coming lower, so that when there's a turnaround point, if there's no reset, at least you'll have a version of a trailing by above level, even unrelated to the Morganacci lines. So that'll give it a little bit more, because there could be times where the ABM can, price will dip, make a new low, but the ABM gold is all the way up at the 76% or so, and so far from the action, and you may not always get a reset, and this will give you that opportunity to have it come down and be closer to where price action is, and until the new full buy configuration can reset it. So what a beautiful and exciting way to end an October. Can't think of anything better. The amount of movement on this was just so terrific and so clean. From the signal standpoint, that this is why I was talking about days and days ago that you can't be afraid of the volatility. In these cases, you want to attack it, because you can create a year's worth of returns in one day, and in this particular case, within this month, has been worth several years. Actually, it's been that many points. So very exciting stuff, and glad to be able to put it on that Skype chat and point it out in real time as we've been experiencing a lot of these. It's been really fun to attack it, and clearly points out an exact reason why you want to be with the Trade the NBI, because we're like really spot on with where the algos are at this particular point. So as always, trade well, and I'll keep putting up the charts so you can see how precise it can be. Trade well.